Carl Sandburg is probably best known for his 1914 poem, Chicago, where he writes, "Hog butcher of the world, toolmaker, stacker of wheat, player with railroads and the nation's freight handler, stormy, husky, brawling, city of big shoulders." It's right that he should be known for that poem. It's very good. And he also had first-hand experience with that world as a laborer and as a truck driver and as a journalist. But Sandburg also had experience with the world of war when he volunteered for the Army during the Spanish-American War in 1898. His experience during that period of his life gave him perspective on his generation's trauma that was the First World War, then called the war to end all wars. That was before we started to count them. Thanks for joining us today in Facing Reality for Social Justice as we look at three of Sandburg's 1916 poems, Buttons, And They Obey, Wars, and the 1918 entry, Grass. Sandburg considered himself a socialist. He had been an organizer for the Social Democratic Party of Wisconsin, which was the Wisconsin chapter of the Socialist Party of America. And he did this a couple of years before World War I started. But probably more than a socialist, he saw himself as a humanist who saw the working people of the country as the true builders of a just society. Our first poem, Buttons, touches on the contradictions between the vision of war on home front and its reality. I have been watching the war maps slammed up for advertising in front of the newspaper office. Buttons, red and yellow buttons, blue and black buttons, are shoved back and forth across the map. A laughing young man, sunny, with freckles, climbs a ladder, yells a joke to somebody in the crowd, and then fixes a yellow button 1 inch west, and follows the yellow button with the black button 1 inch west. "10,000 men and boys twist on their bodies in a red soak along a river edge, gasping of wounds, calling for water, some rattling death in their throats. Who would guess what it cost to move 2 buttons 1 inch on the war map here in front of the newspaper office where the freckled-faced young man is laughing to us?" War obviously means different things to different people. In today's world of social media, there is almost real-time viewing of wars on a different front. We see the butchery that's happening daily in Gaza. We see the faces, the deaths, the tears of children crying for their lost families. We see the devastation caused by drones and missiles as the war in Ukraine takes its human and physical toll. We see the massacres and hunger in Sudan as 2 Sudanese armies compete with each other on who's going to control the wealth and people of the country. We see the civil war in Myanmar, where the military government continues to hold power against years of struggle by armed groups fighting for democracy. Did I leave any place out? Haiti? Congo? You can name a few places, I'm sure, as well. Watching social media doesn't necessarily give us understanding of what's happening in those battles. Sandburg's next poem, And They Obey, does touch on the reality of who fights these wars and who gives direction. Smash down the cities, knock the walls to pieces, break the factories and cathedrals, warehouses, and homes into loose piles of wood and lumber and black burnt wood. You are the soldiers, and we command you. Build up the cities, set up the walls again, put together once more the factories and cathedrals, warehouses and homes into buildings for life and labor. You are workmen. and citizens all, we command you. And they obey clearly shows the relationship of leaders and those led. Smash, you are told, and because you are military, you obey. Build, you are told, and because you are a worker, you obey. That's a rather cynical description of that relationship. Working people, both military and civilian, have many different approaches to how they react in situations that are given to them. The poem has a more subtle underlying feeling, I think. For one, Sandburg makes an obvious distinction between soldiers being a destroyer and the workmen being builders. Not a small distinction. The workmen are not only people who build, they are also citizens. Again, not a small or unimportant distinction. No matter if a person is a citizen or not, however, they obey. That's the title of the poem, after all. But it's also a built-in contradiction that Sandburg develops in their next poem, Wars. In the old wars, drum of hooves and the beat of shod feet. In the new wars, hum of motors and the tread of rubber tires. In the wars to come, silent wheels and the whirl of rods not yet dreamed out in the heads of men. In the old wars, clutches of short swords and jabs into the faces with spears. In the new wars, long-range guns and smashed walls, guns running a spit of metal and men falling in 10s and 20s. In the wars to come, new silent deaths, new silent hurlers, not yet dreamed out in the heads of men. In the old wars, kings quarreling, and thousands of men following. In the new wars, kings quarreling, and millions of men following. In the wars to come, kings kicked under the dust, and millions of men following great causes, not yet dreamed out in the heads of men. In this poem, the contradiction between obedience and refusal becomes much more clear. It's left to the future to be resolved, but in the future it will be the kings who are kicked under the dust, not the thousands or millions following. This is quite a change, and a much more revolutionary change from the poem And They Obey. This is a poem that a more active role to working people is given in developing their future and their lives. And it's a much more explicitly socialist solution to the social, political, and economic conditions and relationships that Sandburg is known for discussing. Our last poem, and this one is from 1918, takes us back to the basic reality of war, death and the memory of those who fought and died. It's entitled Grass. Pile the bodies high at Austerlitz and Waterloo. Shovel them under and let me work. I am grass, I cover all. And pile them high at Gettysburg, and pile them high at Ypres and Verdun. Shovel them under and let me work. "2 years, 10 years, and passengers ask the conductor, 'What place is this? Where are we now?' I am the grass, let me work." Well, that's our show for today. Thank you for joining us in Facing Reality for Social Justice. And we hope you come back next time. The music that was brought together here as part of this program was done by me, produced by me, pulled together by me, and my name is Wayne Heimbach.